Europe is quietly preparing for war with Russia. Serbia sounds the alarm. Europe is entering one of its most tense periods in recent history. Statements from leaders, military commanders, and intelligence assessments are raising a question that many hoped would never need to be asked again. Is Europe preparing for a war with Russia? This isn't sensationalism, this isn't rumor. These are words directly from European officials and world leaders. And now, another voice has added shocking weight to the growing alarm. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić. In a recent television interview, he made a stark warning that the continent is gearing up for a possible large-scale conflict. His words were not vague, nor were they diplomatic. They were direct, unsettling, and clear. Tonight, we break down his statement, the context behind it, the response across Europe, and what this means for the future of the continent. Stay with us, because the details you're about to hear paint a picture far more serious than most people realize. But what exactly did Vučić say? And why is Europe suddenly preparing for the unthinkable? Let's dive in. Vučić's shocking alarm. On November 11th, during an appearance on Serbia's Pink TV, President Aleksandar Vučić delivered a warning that instantly grabbed international headlines. Citing intelligence assessments, political developments, and military signals across Europe, he stated, "The war between Europe and Russia is becoming increasingly clear. Everyone is preparing for it." He emphasized that this conclusion wasn't speculation or political exaggeration. According to him, the evidence is simply too strong to ignore. Vučić said he had reached this assessment after carefully reviewing information available to him as head of state. Information that he suggests points to escalating military preparations across the continent. It wasn't an off-the-cuff remark. It wasn't casual commentary. It was a direct statement made on national television, reported internationally, including by the Russian news agency TASS. For many viewers, the message was chilling. Europe is not only concerned about Russia's actions, it is actively preparing for a potential war. But what triggered such a dire assessment? Some say it began with a powerful warning from France. The French military warning. To understand the gravity of Vučić's statement, we must look at what happened just days earlier. The chief of the General Staff of the French Army, General Fabien Mandon, made a message that echoed across NATO and beyond. He stated that France must be ready for a possible conflict with Russia within the next 3 to 4 years. Not decades, not an abstract future scenario, but within a window as short as 36 to 48 months. This is not a minor comment. This is France's highest-ranking military officer speaking about real-time strategic preparation. General Mandon's words indicate a possible shift in French defense planning, concern about long-term tensions with Moscow, a recognition that the war in Ukraine could escalate or expand. For Serbia, a country that maintains delicate relations with both Russia and the European Union, this was a major signal. Vučić said that hearing such a blunt message from France only confirmed what he was already seeing. The European continent is bracing for a scenario that was once considered impossible. So why is Serbia feeling this pressure so intensely? The answer lies in its unique geopolitical position. Serbia caught in the middle. Serbia has long walked a political tightrope between East and West. On one side, the European Union, NATO nations, Western diplomatic influence. On the other, Russia, a historical ally, strong cultural ties, energy dependence, and political cooperation. This balancing act has never been easy, but according to Vučić, the situation is now more extreme than ever. He described Serbia's position as being caught between two rocks. The meaning is clear. Western countries are pushing for alignment and unity in the face of Russian aggression. Russia expects loyalty, cooperation, and political support. Serbia cannot satisfy both sides at once. In times of peace, such a position is manageable. In times of escalating global tension, it becomes a dangerous trap. Vučić suggested that Serbia is under growing diplomatic pressure from both directions, each side expecting the country to take a stance that could have serious consequences. This geopolitical squeeze is one of the key reasons why Serbia is reassessing its own security priorities. And that brings us to Serbia's next big move, strengthening its military forces. But how far is Serbia willing to go? Let's explore. Serbia's response: a push for military strength. Realizing the environment around Serbia is rapidly changing, Vučić delivered another important message. Serbia must significantly reinforce its military capabilities for self-defense. This wasn't framed as aggression. It wasn't about taking sides. It was about survival and protection. According to Vučić, the regional security landscape is destabilizing. European countries are raising defense budgets. NATO is reinforcing its eastern borders. And Russia remains deeply entrenched in the war in Ukraine. He warned that Serbia cannot rely solely on diplomacy in such an environment. Instead, it must strengthen its defensive equipment, its trained manpower, and its readiness for potential spillover conflicts. Serbia has already been modernizing parts of its military in recent years, but Vučić suggested that the pace must now increase dramatically. This is not surprising considering the scale of military expansion taking place across Europe, something Vučić has been observing closely. But what exactly is happening across Europe that convinced Vučić the continent is preparing for war? The answer reveals a dramatic shift in European defense planning. European nations on alert. Vučic's statement suggests that Europe is undergoing a rapid militarization, shaped largely by the war in Ukraine and rising tensions with Russia. Across the country, Germany has announced massive defense spending increases. Poland is expanding its military at the fastest rate in its modern history. Finland and Sweden, historically neutral, have moved toward full integration with NATO. The Baltic states are fortifying their borders and calling for stronger NATO commitments. France and the UK are adjusting their military doctrines for potential direct conflict scenarios. Now, while these developments are not declarations of war, they signal a shift in strategic thinking. European countries no longer believe that peace is guaranteed. Vučić's statement reflected this broader trend. From his position, he sees European powers not only supporting Ukraine, but preparing for the possibility that conflict could spread. His conclusion, while alarming, is based on observable actions: increased military drills, massive ammunition stockpiling, border fortifications, long-term military investment plans, and intelligence assessments warning of future instability. Whether these measures are preventative or preparatory is up for debate, but they undeniably contribute to the perception that Europe is gearing up for something big. All of this raises one final, critical question. What happens next? What this means for the future? Vučić's statement does not mean war is inevitable. It means that leaders across Europe are no longer ruling out the possibility. From France's warning of a conflict timeline, to Serbia's fears of being squeezed, to the continent-wide military buildup, the message is that Europe is preparing for any scenario. For Serbia, this means navigating a dangerous diplomatic landscape. For Europe, it means adjusting to a new era of uncertainty. For Russia, it signals that the world is watching closely and preparing accordingly. The coming years will determine whether this situation cools down or erupts into something far larger. One thing is certain: the political and military moves happening right now will shape the future of the continent. As Europe stands at a crossroads, one question remains: are these preparations a path to peace, or the first steps towards a larger conflict?